Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Um, I want to continue our discussion, and I've been thinking a lot about how the bifurcation and the division that the planet finds itself in, and this rift that's being carved out to create opposite factions, emotionally so invested, it's a completely in their position that there is no rationale, there is no discussion, and there is no understanding, and there is no coming together. And as I've stated in the last two trainings that I've done, the responsible party, and this is the part, and this is the part that really sad, is that so many people I know in the Light community are on either side of this plank, of this bifurcation, when in fact, what either side is not realizing, both sides are being manipulated. And they are being manipulated by the archons. They are, you cannot underestimate them. The Gnostic called them the archon or inorganic being. The Book of Enoch calls them the watchers, also inorganic being. Carlos Castaneda called them inorganic being as a shaman from New Mexico. The Book of Enoch and the native tribes call them Wetiko, or the adversary. It is an ancient, dangerous, highly dangerous enemy, because the way they operate is that they completely blend with you and they mirror you completely. And I want you to take very clearly what I'm saying today. I'm not taking positions. I'm trying to give you real life example, and I want to decloak who the real enemy. I want to give you tools so that when you're feeling triggered, you can uncover who is responsible, and you can apply some of the process that I'm going to give you toward the end of the class as a way to overcome these triggers. They originally, to give you a brief history again, if you're joining this video for the first time, they are not, it's not the Luciferian fallen angels. Their origin, according to the Gnostic, is different, but according to the Book of Enoch, they're actually fallen angels. It was a group of 200 chief or general and their choir and the army they command, who decided that they became enamored. This is right after the Garden of Eden, became enamored with the beauty of human female and the desire to copulate with them. And in so doing, they took human form. They are immortal celestial beings that did not need to propagate or have offspring, but they took human form. Initially, they tried to fool Eve and many other these beings that were still 5D. This is right after the Garden of Eden. And therefore, they couldn't succeed. Eve could see right through them. But they begin to create chaotic, catastrophic event because they were much more powerful than the then created men and women. And they created climate event, all kinds of event. And when human beings began to be scared, they got grounded into survival. And I'm going to get to that survival in a moment, because that survival is what grounds us into 3D. It's the rod, the central axis of the 3D world. Okay? And so as we begin to worry about, am I going to survive? How do I figure out, and what kind of cunning should I use in order for me to, we step out of the 5D and begin to become so dense that they were able now to show up to us as human beings, whereas before we would see immediately, this is a celestial being that's posing as a human being. And I'm not interested. But now, not knowing this, there was crossbreeding. And when that happened, our DNA were altered. And genetically, we went from 12 strands of DNA, 12 strands of DNA into 2 strands because of this crossbreeding. And I want you to understand something that I hear a lot in the news right now. People are worried about vaccine or not vaccine, altering DNA and all that. Our DNA has been dumbed down to the dumbest level already. There's nothing worse that can be done to it. And I don't believe personally, this is my view, I don't believe personally that, although there might be other components in the vaccine, because I'm not a geneticist, I'm not a virologist, I don't know. But it has nothing to do with actually altering DNA, because we're already at the bottom. That work, they've succeeded already, okay? So here's the thing. I want to give you the tool. I want you to understand what I'm trying to say, because there's some key component. The energy that is being, but first, before I get into this, these beings are not capable of creating anything. In fact, the Gnostic Bible call what they do simulacrum. It looks like something that's perfect, but it is not. And in fact, they claim in the Gnostic Bible, because the Gnostic Bible, which was in the Dead Sea Scroll, that we are, these books are now being extracted. Some more, there are more recent discovery in other caves. And 50% of their information is about the Archon and how to deal with them, how to recognize them. And it is to our detriment today that we are not aware of this. And every time you talk about fallen angels, people start scratching themselves and start getting nervous or think that you're cuckoo. And this is not a conversation up to the pandemic and up to me watching this being played out for the whole planet, that I was comfortable having open conversation on mass media, because I didn't want people to ridicule me, to think they're already saying that I'm cuckoo. I didn't want them to really think that I've lost it. Because if we believed in them, at least we would be we would have the awareness that is my reaction to this understanding or this knowledge exaggerated. And if it's over the top, is this really coming from me? So here is the thing. These beings are capable of corrupting everything. Because when they crossbred, it wasn't just genetic manipulation. What they did is that they brought what was called, what the Book of Enoch calls forbidden knowledge. They brought information that human beings, as we are being so young, emotionally immature, we're not ready to process. For example, they taught human beings how to create weapons to kill each other. They also taught sorcery. They taught magic. They taught all kinds of things that we didn't have the moral elevation nor the ethics to be able to govern and use properly. Now, none of these things are necessarily bad, but it's how you govern it, how you use it, right? So, and do not underestimate them, because the way they appear, they are so invisible, because now they are, bloodline. I want you to understand what I'm saying to you. There is not one person on the planet that doesn't have them in them. It's in your bloodline. That's why you have 2 strands of DNA, which is the reason why the DNA reconstruction process that I downloaded in 2008 becomes important right now to do. Because it will shift flip the coin around. But let's focus on what we're talking about right now. They are inside of you, and they know you better than you know yourself. It's not some boogeyman that's outside that you're looking, it's this person or that person. They exist in you. They're affecting what you're thinking. More importantly, they are murmuring noise and inflating ideas and concepts into your mind, making you feel that these ideas and these concepts are actually intuitive knowing in your gut. And at the moment you feel it, you believe through and through that you're getting download from God and that information is correct. This is what is called a delusion. Unlike when you're mentally ill and you have hallucination where you see things, these are not seeing things. They are visceral knowing that you have in your whole body. And the way that, let me dissect it clearly for you. The way these visceral knowing are created is through the process of the same thing that's supposed to liberate us from the galactic equator, which is truth, authenticity, and transparency. Truth, authenticity, and transparency. On both sides of this bifurcation, everyone is claiming that their information is true, authentic, and it's about transparency. Both of them are completely convinced. And the funny thing is that, and this is the part that we as human beings living in 3D and survival are not getting. There is not just one truth. Truth, cosmic truth, is an infinite spectrum. Because the truth of the galactic masters, or not the truth of the solar masters, or not the truth of the planetary masters, or certainly not my truth, nor are they Melchizedek's truth. It's or God's truth. It's in an infinite spectrum. And so when what they do is that they are using that disclosure and insight that we want, giving the fact that this energy now is bombarding the planet, trying to accelerate growth and evolution and causing us to pop up and elevate and move toward the new earth. They are using that very truth by corrupting how we perceive it. In other words, as they lead us into information that have a facet of truth in it, a kernel of truth in it. But how we interpret the truth, how we react to it, they poison, they corrupt, they inflate. They completely create a situation where you begin now, instead of seeing it as information and data and insight, and trying to sit with it and trying to figure out, is there a bigger scope or a part of this truth? You can think of it as a jewel that has multiple facets, and you're focused only in one facet, and you're seeing the light being reflected to this one facet, and you're not seeing all the other facets. And instead of trying to see if there is a full facet perception, can I step back far enough to be able to see the whole thing? People what they do is that they begin to now tell you by their emotional, and part of it, I cannot blame them completely, because the problem with humanity is that we are not emotionally intelligent enough, because we are grounded into survival, and they can manipulate this. They take this part of it, that information that may be partially true, not cosmically true, but it's an aspect, a facet of the truth. They take that facet, they bring it to your consciousness, and the moment you have it, and then they begin to come in and say, it is because, and then they find a boogeyman on the outside. They find someone or collective, a group of people to blame. And then the next part, you have to go out there and burn things down, because if you don't do it, you're gonna die imminently. The whole future of the planet and humanity this is the end. We are being, and they're doing it on both sides, and we're being set up for us to destroy each other. And as long as we're doing this, there is no ascendance. And they know what they are doing, because the window for us to ascend and move into the new earth, it's 3 days. It's 80 hours. And if they can keep us fighting for that time, we will not find this opportunity again for 31 million years. They are extremely tactical and extremely intelligent. And what they are using is they take the piece of information and they're saying to us, here is this information, and I'm gonna bring this information to your consciousness. It's brought in, and then they're like, blame this person or this group. It is because of them, and they are the one that's evil. They're trying to destroy the planet, and we should all go out in the street and start burning things. And I'm seeing how quickly this spread on mass media was a shock to me. Because I was looking on both sides since the beginning of the pandemic. I'm seeing more and more of these crazy posts, more and more people that I know whose character I could have sworn they are light workers, people I channel with, people I'm seeing them completely transform and change into these warrior or ogres that are charging, and there is no rationale. And I'm going to give you an example to kind of nail the point in the coffin. One of the claims that was done that the cabal that's trying to orchestrate the demise of humanity or the alteration of all of us and all that is a group of men that are pedophile and that eat children alive. This is not a superlative for them. The people who are believing in this actually believe that they are boiling children in a pot. They actually believe this. They've created fake websites, they create all kinds of things to kind of support that agenda. And the people who are creating these things are also completely infected by the alcohol. Now, you know I'm from Voodoo Island, and these kind of scary things, I'm not afraid of them. And I actually grew up in that environment. So when this thing is happening, I have a better sense of what's true and what may not be, what is suspicious information. And as I've said in previous videos, the 3 things that I do because as a teacher, people send information to me all the time. And I watch all of it. Well, sometimes not all of it, because there are 3 filters that I use. First, as I look at the information, is this generating fear in me? That's the first filter. The second filter, is this information, video, text that I'm reading, demonizing a person or a group of people? Third, am I being asked to be a militant or to become radicalized for this purpose, for this agenda? And if all 3 of them are true, I'm putting it on the shelf somewhere. It's not that there is information that's not true in it. There's a truth somewhere in there, but for now, I'm putting it on the shelf. Because the real path to the new earth, it's not in these. If these 3 things are true, there is an infection. And I have to put it aside. I have to find neutrality. It's not neutral. I have to find neutrality. There are principalities that are super intelligent that are manipulating me and the people who are dispensing this information, who are spreading it. They're being manipulated. I have to surrender. And again, because they're inside of you, they know how to inflate your emotional reaction. Sometimes you feel a feeling and you think the feeling that you have because of what you're watching or seeing is yours, but it is not yours. Or rather, it's not 100% yours. The feeling, let's say it's a survival thing. Okay, they're telling you if you don't do this, you're not going to survive. The race will not survive. This is the main core of both sides of the agenda of how the outcomes are inflating. Because the outcomes have been doing this, every conflict, every war, every battle, from as long as human beings were on the planet. And so survival becomes the key. You have to ask yourself as you begin to now feel that there is an agenda, and that, you know, I feel if I don't do something, I'm going to die. And there is enough scary things that are happening around the world. And I'm not just talking about pandemic. I'm talking about climate change. How many hurricanes now in the Caribbean, etc. It's earthquake, volcano. There's a volcano in Italy. There's another one in the Canary Island, etc. There's so many things that are happening that are all terrifying. And I have to say to you that it's not necessarily a cabal that has created all of these events, but rather it is the fact that humanity, when I go into my space where I surrender and let go of everything and I become very neutral, it's the fact that humanity, since the Industrial Revolution to 150 years ago, to 200 years ago, have done all the wrong thing by following greed rather than following our own inner knowing and going into our intuitive insight and follow our heart to do what's good for all humanity and for the planet. Nature now is correcting, and that correction is going to be brutal for us. And in the brutality of it, they're using that information and those corrections as a way to, again, demonize very specific group people. You know, when these fires are happening all over California, and there is a phenomenon that's called a fire tornado. There's a town in California called Paradise that burned in less than a day, half a day. The whole town burned down. And so many people were incinerated in their car. There was some people who managed to escape and managed to take videos. It looked like you were driving to hell. Car tires were melting. It was absolutely horrendous stuff. Because it's one road, it's a mountain town, it's one road that leads in and out. And there was not enough time. The fire was just on top of them in no time. And a few people recorded what is called a fire tornado, which is a flame thing that looks like a tornado that creates a column of fire. They claim that it was DARPA and that there were laser beams that were being shot from, and it's therefore the cabal that's trying to do this. That it has nothing to do with this. It's an actual natural phenomenon. And so what I'm saying is that, and the people who are saying this actually believe it. And they feel it in the core of their being. And I'm saying this to you because I've had those delusions, because they are in me and they affected me too. And I know what it felt like when I was living the delusion. Every part of my being told me what I was feeling is the truth. And there is nothing anyone on the planet could say to me that to prove otherwise.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a question.
Yes.
I myself has those same delusions, what you experience. My question to you is this: because you feel like this is something that must be done, and it's in your gut, and you feel like you're going against everything of what, and in other words, what you're supposed to be doing. For me, my experience is that what I was supposed to be doing, it's my liberation. It's my liberation.
Mm-hmm.
But yet again, I had this gut feeling in telling me not to do it, not to do it. It's no good. Whatever you're gonna do, it's not gonna be good for you. It's not gonna, you know. And finally, I talked to you about this, and I called you, and you kept on telling me that Marjorie, you got to do this. You got to do this. But how do you step into the position where you realize that what is happening is the influence of the archon?
Okay, this is why we're having this conversation. Because if you
Okay.
if you don't know that the archon exists, you're screwed. The first thing for you to know is that this is why all of the rest of humanity is in the chaos that they're in. Because the first thing for you to do is to know that the archon exists and they are capable of doing this. And what you did that was right, that was right is that you talked to me. And since I was not being influenced by them, because this is the way they customize these things specifically to you, I was able to discern it was the archon. And I kept telling you.
But also, Pierre, there's another strong feeling that was there too when I was going to this. It was that doubt.
Yeah.
And 1 minute, I know I was doing something right. And the next minute, it was like that pulling. And that said, no. Don't go there. Don't go there. You should be doing this instead. Don't go there. It's like there's this doubt and this thing that's going. So, it was terrible. It was terrible.
What you're describing, Marjorie, is the internal struggle between your real truth and the influence of the archon. There's an inner battle that takes place in your psyche. It's you standing in your real truth, and then there is them inflating you. But all of it always connect to one thing. Whatever decision or whatever thing that you have to do is connected to you surviving.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about survival.
And it was fear too.
Well, yeah, but of course, this is why I'm saying that you have to ask yourself, is this creating fear in me?
Yeah.
Is it demonizing someone or something? And am I, these are filters that you have to use. I'm trying to give you tools so that you can recognize very quickly I'm being influenced. Although I have this irrational reaction, emotional reaction. I'm going to I described a little bit of it last week, but I'm going to describe it again to use it as an example to illustrate my point. When COVID started in March in 2020, I had foreseen it. So the moment I saw it coming from China, I knew what it was. I knew exactly what was going to happen. So by February, I began to go deep within myself. And at that moment, what came to me was that as a spiritual teacher wanting to create Gaiaville, an ascended community, because when I got this in 2014, 2015, I thought Gaiaville would have been created when this event started to happen, and that the village would be set up and I could say to everybody, come up, okay? And so many times the past 15, 10 years, I was joking all the time, I'll send you a red flag, I'll call you, I'll ask you to all to come and all that, and we can go upstate and weather these out. But there is no village. I thought I failed. And when I sat with this feeling of complete failure, I thought to myself, okay, maybe because I've been trying to help humanity achieve ascendance for 5,000 years. Here's another lifetime again where I failed and I feel completely defeated. And as I sat with this, I begin to say, okay, if I'm experiencing this, what do I really feel inside? Because at the time, then lockdown began to happen in New York because so many people were dying, etc. So what am I feeling because of the lockdown, because of everything? Plus my cousin died and all. In total, Marjorie and I know more than 10 people who are dead because the brown and Black communities were highly affected by the pandemic, much more than any other communities. And you know, it seems like every week, every 2-3 days, Marjorie will call me. Do you remember so and so? Yeah. Well, this person died of COVID. And it was just this endless, and it felt like there was a dark cloud or wall that was closing on me. And what it made me experience initially was grief. And I began to be very aware of the loss and the deep grief that I was experiencing. And then in the grief, I began to go even deeper because grief is in 5 stages. There is denial, there is anger, there is depression, there is bargaining, and there is acceptance. And I was realized that there were days I was experiencing 2 things at the same time. I could be angry and at the same time depressed, or I could be angry and in disbelief and denial at the same time. So as this was happening, thank God I knew the stages, because when you don't know the stages of grief and the grief come and all these emotions are moving about you, 1 minute you're in denial, the next minute you're angry, the next minute you're in depression, and next you don't know what's happening, you think you're going cuckoo. And I went even deeper. Okay, what is the grief connected me to? It's loss of life. What is the loss of life connected me to even deeper? Because again, the wall of death kept getting closer and closer to me. My own survival. Now it's getting somewhere. It's my own survival. And I'm like, okay. I kept on trying to be more and more neutral. This is a several-day process. I'm collapsing everything together, but this took several weeks for me to unpack. Okay, survival. Am I afraid to die? No, it's not just about my death. The fear for me was the failure in this lifetime. And more important for me with the survival, it was about trying to figure out, because it was so big and so immense, I knew it was made up of multiple prongs, like a tree that has roots. So I needed to figure out what the roots were. What are the emotions that are composing this? So that I can identify it and deal with each one of them one at a time. Because right now I am overwhelmed over this huge monster that showed up for me. And as I decomposed the survival, I realized the first thing. I grew up in Voodoo Island in Haiti, and it's a paranoid culture where you cannot even sometimes accept food for people because you're always afraid you're going to be poisoned or something is going to happen to you. You're suspicious, you're highly paranoid, and you can't accept things as they are because you're always thinking the worst and assuming the worst. You're never at peace, you're never completely relaxed or open. The other fan that opened up for me was the fact that because of this, my mother was an overprotective woman. And I grew up around, I remember maybe twice my mother allowed us, me and my brother, to go to camp. As for Marjorie, all the women, never would they be able to go anywhere unless my mother was there holding on to the ring. It was, and at the time I interpreted it as love and care, but it wasn't love. It was projection of our own paranoia into us. that again fuel the culture that I existed in. Then I asked myself, is this all? But it wasn't all. There was also survival that was connected to food insecurity and shelter insecurity that connected to yearly hurricanes. There were these major floods that used to happen all the time, we call lavalas. The kind of flood that you're seeing in the media right now when New Orleans are completely flooded, it was to happen in the capital where we lived all the time. Or survival as it relates to food insecurity. We ate every day, but there was always discussion about money, about not having enough, and rationing and measuring. There was, in the family around my mom, there was always that discussion about how we're gonna feed the family. Thank God we ate. There was no, I can't remember a day where where we didn't have 3 meals. Even though it may have been small or something very simple, we ate. But the conversation was always there about food insecurity, not having enough. And the last thing that actually popped in my meditation when I was neutral enough was the epigenetic memory that connected me to my ancestors going back 400 years of slavery, all the way back in Africa, where we lost control and we had to do anything possible for us to survive, just to survive the passage in these slave ship across the Atlantic. 50% of the slaves died during the passage. There are huge epigenetic markers in a Black person's DNA that connects to these fears. And so for me, and I have to tell you, I thank COVID for this, because without that experience and that fear, feeling the wall closing and death getting closer, because every other day there was a conversation about someone dying. I had another, something happened right, it must be around April or May of 2020. I went to the local supermarket because I ran out of moisturizer. Even though I was not going anywhere, I didn't want to have ashy skin. I still maintain, I was doing all the routine, the toiletry routine I was doing every day. I shaved every day. I did everything because that was the only thing that I could control, right? So I walked into the Rite Aid, and as you walked in, the cashier is to the left, right, immediate left. And I know exactly where it is. It's my local there. I've been in this neighborhood for 25 years. So I walked in and I'm about to go back down the aisle, and I look in my peripheral vision to my left. There was 3 police officers that were there. The cashiers are running about or scurrying about, and there is a customer on the floor. Several items of, there was a line, several items of claps over the floor, gasping for air. And I knew immediately, it's COVID. Get out, get out. And at the time, we didn't know how it was spread. I had my gloves on. This is the early days. Double mask and everything else. I made a turnabout. I'm like, it's not that serious. I can spend another 3 days with ashy skin. I'm okay. I'll keep rubbing water on my leg. And I immediately left the place. So when you have these experiences, you feel that this wall of death is getting closer and closer to you. And I'm thanking God for this. I'm telling you, I would have never deconstructed how survival is grounded in me with all of these items, each one of them being different, but all of them feeding the same tree, which is a fear of dying, a fear of not making it. So you have to, when you have these experiences, use the fear as a way to deconstruct the survival in you, because this is what the Archon are using to inflate. I was jumping out of my skin because I was so convinced. They're using it to get to me. But now that I have that information, if I repair all of these branches, all of these, trunks, all of these tentacles, if I repair and change my spiritual psychology for each one of them, then they can't inflate me. They cannot manipulate me anymore. So every time you have this fear moment where you are completely in panic, you need to find deep inside of you. You have to become very neutral and go even deeper. Because again, it was camouflaged behind several layers. Initially, it was just grief and loss. And then the next thing I know, the grief, as I went deeper into deconstructing the grief and the bereavement and the loss and everything else, then I realized survival, my own survival, because I feel the walls are getting closer. And then how does that connect directly to my own experience? Any questions or any comments?
Here, I have a question.
Yes.
This is kind of process-wise, because as you know, when my mother passed away recently, it brought up the grief in me. And as I was processing the grief, I realized also I was simply afraid of death and dying. And so I processed that a little bit, and it kind of didn't take me long. I used the mantra that you sent us. And it's like by the third week, I felt better. And so I have not been having this specific feeling in my body and that specific fear. But my guess is out there if it's completely processed, because I did the mantra and I did some self-talk, but I didn't do specifically connecting, letting go to the blessed field kind of part. So I was just thinking in terms of how we walk through this. Should I, in this example, should I go back and look for this, or should I just do what's in front of me, assuming that if whatever some practice, it will show up, just maybe in a different context, right?
Well, I two things. You have two choices. You can go back and look at it deeper, giving the information I'm giving you today, and try to figure out if since you've already identified there's a fear of death, try to find that survival. How many branches is it connected to?
Right.
Okay. Kind of like a query to try to figure it out, but you have to be very, very neutral. And I mean by that, the neutral where you say, I release all attachment, fears, and control, and I completely surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity.
Yeah.
Multiple times. And when you become that neutral, where you are the luminosity and the emptiness, these things showed up. And the day they begin to show up, they showed up one after the other. Like a fan opened up, and I could see all of them.
Mm-hmm.
It took weeks to get there, but the moment I was at Notola, it's like the fan just opened up and I saw them all at once.
Because I have to tell you, what you just saying got me thinking that I found more peace since then, and which I've been enjoying. But at the same time, I totally see the value of what you're saying, knowing yourself at that level and knowing how it shows up, knowing how it feels, knowing how it shows up in your body, because it can save you a lot of confusion.
Yeah, because the next time they try to influence me through that, I already know it.
Yeah. So, and I feel, I
By
think
using
about it,
the epigenetic of my race, I already know it. I know what that feels like.
exactly. Yeah. And I obviously, I didn't have time. I didn't go that deep at the time because I was also focusing on my mother.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, it's complicated, particularly there were services, there were things that you needed to do with the family and everything else. I understand. Yeah.
So, so I'm thinking now I would like to go back and, you know, and revisit it and know myself at that level because, you know, otherwise they know something about me that I don't know.
And or you could wait for them to try to influence you again and do some other shenanigan, and at which point you're gonna have to go through the same thing again.
Anyway, yeah.
You know.
And you know what's also interesting? I kind of noticed that typically when I query for the root cause, if I feel something in disempowerment, I query for the root cause. It's easy, relatively easy, because we've been doing it for so long.
Yep.
But I noticed recently that at times it's been hard for me, not as easy as I'm used to. So I think that is trying to tell me something. They're trying to tell me something, and my guess is trying to tell me that perhaps that peace that I'm being enjoying is not real, you know.
Oh, well.
Because
well, I don't know if it's not real, because we can say that part of it is true.
Part of it is true. That's what I meant to say. I didn't finish the sentence, kind of. Yeah. I think that should be, the piece is nice, but there also should be that clarity and ease to go with it.
Yeah.
So,
and when you know yourself in that depth, then the kind of what that experience did to me, because it happened April, May. What it did for me is that I had such a clear understanding of what I was looking at. I mean, for the whole planet. Because I realized it was the survival, but I couldn't utter it because I couldn't have that conversation with anyone, because everyone around me was so polarized and so agitated that I couldn't have like I'm having a rational discussion with you right now. People were ready to jump at my throat. I couldn't have a conversation. And I decided on my mass media, I'm only having this conversation with the class. I'm not making that kind of conversation in an open forum, because I don't want the people to start throwing rocks at me and start arguing and try to attack me. It's a waste of my energy.
Yes.
But the true culprit, it's them. And the them is that they're completely invisible.
But I think what you're saying, regardless of which approach you take, or I might take, ultimately, it's a matter of going deeper. It's a matter of going deeper.
Yeah.
Because there should be, you know, when you know yourself, like you said, excuse me, at that level, then you should not have issues you should not be struggling to identify, oh, this is this is that. And
it's not that they're not going to influence you. At the time for you to realize that it's them is faster.
Exactly. And it's easier for me to snap out of it too.
Yes, it's faster. It's much faster for you to recover from it.
Yes.
They will try, because they're dirty little birds. They will try.
Yeah.
And it's their purpose.
Yeah.
But you will be able to realize what it is, and then you can snap out of it faster. You can go, okay,
Mhm.
I know what it is. I know what that energy is. I am being pushed. It's the archon. You know, it's the food insecurity. This is the paranoia that's coming from my culture and from my mother. This is, and I can identify them now. And because I'm able to do this, I'm able to say, okay, I'm not going to let this dominate my consciousness. They're
Well, I
using
think
this to influence me about this particular thing. It's paranoia. I need to calm down.
I also think there is a lot to say of like having Christian background, how we view death, right?
Yeah.
Where there's no concept of non-attachment or letting go or reincarnation for that matter that was taken out of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's typically a scary thought, a scary experience.
Yep. Yep. That the death is final and that's it.
The death is final, that kind of thinking. So
Yep.
that's almost like obvious thing to
Yep.
kind of cross that. But then, like you said, that can branch out to other things or be a trigger for other things as well.
Yep. And I all these events, all these world events that are going to be happening, and we're only at the beginning of this transition, because we have another 6 years and a few months to go.
Yeah.
So there's going to be worse things.
Mm-hmm.
All of them are opportunity, because till today I would have never known this about myself if I didn't go that deep.
Right.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I do, if you wouldn't mind my asking maybe a silly question. What do the archons, what is their goal? Are they doing this just to get their jollies? Are they feeding off from our fears and negative emotions maybe, or?
Yes, they are feeding on all fear and negative emotion. We are food source for them because they've been banished. We are simply food source for them. And if we were all to ascend, they would starve. They would have. So basically, they're trying to survive. That's their agenda.
And so if we ascend even to the 5D where Eve was.
They won't be able to influence us once we're in 5D.
Right, because like Eve, we will see them.
That's right. They're trying to stop us to get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
And more to the point also is that the way this whole thing is going to happen is that once the 144,000 are awakened, let's say it happened a year from now, you have 144,000 that are awakened. Once that 144,000 is completely awakened, then you are now talking about us collectively working together to open the doorway so that the rest of humanity can entrain and begin to see that there is another choice. Right now, in humanity, there's only two paths, and the two paths are clashing with each other like two giant titans that are like Godzilla versus another monster that are about to destroy each other, crashing and destroying everything in their path. When in fact, the path to the new earth is a third choice. And all of these events that are creating agitations are opportunity for us as wayshowers to achieve ascendance, to achieve transcendence into a higher state of consciousness. And most of humanity will not do this hard work. They will not go as deep as I've gone. They will not plunge so deep with it. They will not do it. They're too scared. That's why you and I signed up as way showers. We are the herald. We are we're gonna the term used in the Kabbalah all the time. We are the chariot. If you have a field of wheat and there's no path, and chariots move through, the wheel will create a path. That's what they mean when they said we're a chariot.
Mhm.
Yes, Janice, you wanted to say something?
No, thank you, thank you.
You see what I'm saying? So we're going to create this path, and we are the wishers. And as we are creating this, and we will level something so that people can osmosis begin to say, oh, there is a third path. I didn't even see it before.
Well, Pierre, remember we talked about this, like I already know of 2 people who have trained to the broadcast that your other class is doing, and the council. And it's like amazing how it works. It's like suddenly it's like they get it, and it's almost instantaneous. I've seen this happen with people that I know.
Yep. I know exactly what you're referring to. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. When we are aware of this, it becomes easier for us to recognize. Is that it's when we're not conscious. Initially, and here's the thing with the Archon, they wait till you have your guards down, and then they inflate. They're dirty little birds. They inflate, and then when they inflate, but now because I've deconstructed my very survival diagram, I know what they are. When they inflate and they inflate the paranoia, I can feel the paranoia. I know what the paranoia feels like. And I have to take long walks on the waterfront. I have to do a lot of release and let go and surrender into source. I release all attachment, all fear and control, and I surrender. I have to do a lot of this for almost a half hour for the paranoia to lift from me. But they are the ones that are causing this kind of agitation.
Then the way showers must be a prime target for them if they are the chariots that will entrain others.
That's exactly right. You're totally right, Janice. Absolutely. They're trying to stop all of us. That's correct.
Thank you. That information, as you said, is the power of discernment.
Yep. And again, every time you're experiencing those kinds of fears, you have to ask yourself, and particularly when you begin to experience the fear, and again, it's typically connected to survival. Sometimes what I have to say to myself, for example, when I begin to have irrational fears, and I have delusion, and I think the fears are real, and I'm jumping out of my skin, and I have to ask myself, but 3 days ago, I was happy. Why am I overreacting? And when I ask myself this question, I usually snap out of it. That's when I realize I'm being influenced. And it helps, like Marjorie was saying, because Marjorie came and talked to me. If you have somebody else outside of you, your couple or whatever, a friend, a family member that you can say, you can have a conversation with, because they typically are not being influenced to the degree that you're being influenced, or not simultaneously. And when you're able to have this conversation, all of a sudden they can begin to say, oh, this is not what it is. And they can help ground some, help you unmask, uncloak what is really happening. And again, we have to, if you keep thinking to yourself that the Archon is not enemy and I'm past that and I'm so superior, and this is the mistake that a lot of light workers are making, and this is why they're falling so prey to this. I see so many of them that are going around thinking that they're all light everything is about me is light, and I'm completely elevated, blah, blah, blah. It's you're, I wish them good luck. They're not gonna land somewhere that's gonna be light. Let's put it this way. Because if you can realize that you can be influenced, you can ask the right question, you can query correctly so that you can discover, because there is a percentage of that information that is mine. For example, I just shared with you my very specific experience, including the epigenetic of my family, my race, that color the way I interpret survival, right? So this is my part that I own. The archons are going to do what they're going to do, but if I close all these doorways, they will not be able to influence me. Now, as far as their influence is concerned, aside from doing my typical breath control work and saying, I release all attachment, fears, and control, and I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity, and take a big exhale and give it back to God, and do it over and over and over again to release that part of my emotion. I can also ask, and this is in the book of Enoch, because when these archons and these beings begin to corrupt the genetic lineage of humanity, and when they begin to influence and change the world, because in the Bible, chapter 6 of Genesis talk about the genealogy, and you realize in the telling of the patriarch age, the age of the patriarch of the Bible, they live in average to be 800 years, 800 to 900 years. This was 12 strands of DNA. And right after that, chapter 6 begin by saying that the sons of God, which were the fallen angel, the watchers, decided to marry the daughters of men. And in the process, they created offspring that were Nephilim, mighty men, and men of renown. And then right after that, mid-chapter, God sent Archangel Gabriel to tell him to go tell Noah, whose bloodline was righteous, meaning in that time that Noah's family had not yet been influenced, or their blood had not been mixed with the blood of the Archon. So when the Bible talks about righteous, when the initiation of Melchizedek says that Melchizedek is a righteous king, it means that he has 12 strands of DNA. When the story, even in the Christian tradition, when they keep talking about all the time Jesus as having the power of the blood of Christ, the chalice, the power of the chalice, or the grail, the Holy Grail, which is really translated in French, from French, is literally translated as sang réel. Sang is blood, réel is real. The real blood, meaning a bloodline that has 12 strands of DNA. Pre-Archon influence, or regenerated to go back to pre-Archon influence. And anybody that has that bloodline is considered to be righteous. So as this information is being, as the idea of having the right blood, for us to find a way out of this, there are two things that we have in our hands. One, from the book of Enoch, when God discovered that the angels were doing this, the watchers were doing this, he sent 3 mighty archangels to correct this by first locking these archons into the darkest pit in the center of the earth for 70 generations. And then he also sent Archangel Gabriel and to cleanse and purify their imprint into the bloodline of humanity. So it was the three archangels are Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. So what I do when I discover the influence of the archon, let's say I'm going to my paranoia. And it's big for me because I go there, I can go there very quickly, but giving everything that's happening. I can go there very quickly, but I can also catch it quickly. And as I go there, then I begin to realize what's happening. Then I ask these three archangels. I call Archangel Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, and I ask them to remove from all of the cellular structure in my body and all the 12 higher bodies, all influence or imprint or manipulations from all of the archons. Now that's one way to actually begin to help in us having the right blood. The second way is for you to do the DNA reconstruction process. That I brought, at the last WESAC, Blue Moon WESAC in 2008, God gifted us with this process, and all of you had that recording. And listen to it, particularly now, every day. Because that will begin to regrow all the 12 strands of DNA and remove the influence of the archon. Any questions, any comments? I hope this information was able to illuminate a little bit more on how these beings, although they are not physical, but you could see their influence in the whole planet. In some ways, they are more real than you and I. Because the bifurcation, the tribalism, the polarization, the clashing, it's not just in America, it's everywhere on the planet. And if you were them, you would do the same thing, because TikTok, come WESAC 2027. If we have done our work correctly as wishers, we will be able to open the doorway so that humanity can find the bridge toward the new earth. And if that happens, they will have no food source. You have to understand something. I'm not angry at the archons. It's like being angry at a virus or a disease. The disease and the virus is doing what every pathogen or virus does. They are multiplying so that they can survive. I don't want to be the host. Clearly, I don't want you to host on me. But I cannot direct my rage toward you, because this is the way nature works. Everybody is trying to propagate. And this is what they're doing. Any other questions or comments? All right, if there are no questions or comments, we'll take a 5-minute break, after which we will do our closing meditation. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. I become aware of any fears paranoia and panic that may exist in my bodies. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And locate areas in your bodies where these fears, panic, and paranoia may exist. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And ask yourself, is this 100% mine? What percentage belongs to me? Keep breathing deeply and slowly. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth. And let this breath begin to rotate counterclockwise, moving through the bottom of your feet, passing through your body, dislodging all of these fears, panic, and paranoia. And let it move all outside of your head and be released completely into source. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of all planetary external events that are generating fears in me. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Is this 100% my fear? What percentage of this is mine? Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth, counterclockwise. Let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging these core fears that are connected to planetary events, and let them all move outside of your head and be released into source. let go. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I now become aware of all survival fears that exist in my bodies. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And try to sense where this fear exists in you. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. As you locate where this is in you, is this 100% mine? What percentage of this belongs to me? Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth. moving counterclockwise. And as you inhale deeply, it passes through the bottom of your feet, moving through you, dislodging the part of the sphere that you owned, and let it move outside of your head and be released completely into source. I surrender all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I now call forth Archangel Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And I ask them to remove from all of my bodies all genetic, emotional, mental, spiritual manipulations, inflations, and mirroring from the archons. I ask that these three mighty archangels to cleanse and purify me of the stained, to remove all of this impurity and cleanse all my bodies and my soul that I may be permanently righteous in front of the throne room of God. Dislodge from me and from all of my bodies from my DNA all the way upwards into the 5D. All of their manipulations, shenanigans, influenced that I may now become aligned to my original genetic destiny. May the light of the three mighty archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, radiate through all my bodies and banish permanently all archon influence. and from the roots of Amen into the throne room of God, I stand in spiritual rectitude, righteousness, and verticality. For I am fixed, designed. Blessed be, blessed be. I am the blessed of the blessed. For I have been redeemed. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let the rest, the freedom, the liberation, of this elevated state radiate from you. A beacon of light, hope, and ascension. To everyone in your circle of influence. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. How we all doing?
That was great, Pierre. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre.
You're all welcome. Good, good, good. All right, family. This brings us to a close for today. I want to thank everyone who's watching me on Patreon, all my supporters. Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate your patronage. And I want to say to all of you again, thank you for listening to me over all these years. We'll figure it out together. Don't worry. I know it sounds scary, but we'll figure it out together and we will step up to do what needs to be done collectively. This I know in my heart. I hope you know this in your heart as well. Good night.
Woohoo!
everyone. Good night. Good night. Love you, love you, love you. Kisses, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Love you. Bye,
Good night,
everyone.
all. Good night.
Good night.